Let's jump right into this explainer. Imagine waking up on a Saturday morning. You have absolutely no alarm set, no meetings on the calendar, no urgent deadlines whatsoever. Yet, before your feet even hit the floor, you feel this deep, heavy exhaustion in your bones. It's the kind of tired that a regular weekend off just can't seem to cure. It's a profound, almost invisible psychological weight. Well, today, we're going to break down exactly why so many high performers, the deeply reliable people in the room, carry this weight every single day. If you find yourself functioning perfectly well at work, but practically collapsing the second you walk through your front door, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to unpack the hidden architecture of modern professional life, why it feels so incredibly heavy right now, and most importantly, why this exhaustion. It is not your fault.
I want to start by just validating what you might be feeling right now. You are not lazy. You are overloaded. Look, if you find yourself utterly drained, even when you theoretically have the downtime to rest, it isn't some personal failure, it isn't a lack of discipline, and it certainly isn't a lack of resilience. You are simply trying to adapt to an ecosystem that literally never stops asking for more of your attention, more of your energy, and more of your emotional regulation. Section 1. The exhaustion paradox, functioning versus feeling. Think about the massive dissonance so many of us experience on a daily basis. It's kind of like living a double life. On the outside, to your boss, your colleagues, your friends, you are the rock. You're highly capable, completely reliable, totally fine, and fiercely low maintenance. You're the one who just gets things done without a fuss. But internally, completely different story. You might be navigating this persistent, low-grade anxiety, maybe a strange emotional numbness, and a deep mental fatigue. That's the exhaustion paradox right there. Your ability to keep functioning at such a high level is exactly the thing hiding your overwhelming distress from the rest of the world. And because nothing is outwardly breaking, nobody steps in to help.
Moving on to Section 2, burnout as a system, redesigning the problem.
We have got to dismantle this idea immediately. The old paradigm tells us that burnout means someone is just too weak to handle the pressure, framing exhaustion as a lack of grit. This is incredibly damaging because it tricks you into feeling deeply ashamed of your own human limits. It keeps you silent. And honestly, putting the blame entirely on the individual completely prevents us from solving the actual structural issue at play.
Because the reality is actually the exact opposite. It's often the most highly capable, emotionally responsible people who break quietly under the weight of modern expectations. Burnout doesn't usually happen to the people who are slacking off, right? It happens to the high performers, the caregivers, the over-deliverers, the people who carry the load for everyone else. They are the most susceptible to this quiet, creeping exhaustion because they're the ones constantly absorbing the friction of the system. So burnout is actually a highly logical response to a fundamentally flawed systems design. I mean, we're dealing with an unprecedented volume of continuous demands. Take digital availability. Your office is literally in your pocket following you home. Then there's the rapid context switching. Bouncing from a deep focus task to an urgent email, back over to a Slack thread, all in a matter of 10 minutes. Add in the remote work boundary blur, where your living room is suddenly a boardroom and the mental boundary between on and off just completely vanishes. And we can't forget the invisible emotional labor of managing your tone and calming other people's anxieties, usually in an environment where urgency almost always trumps thoughtful reflection. Basically, your nervous system is expected to be on duty at all times.
Section 3. Your fragmented brain. The cost of always being on.
There's actually a formal clinical name for that invisible feeling of your brain being pulled in 1,000 different directions at once. It's called chronic cognitive fragmentation. It is the intense mental exhaustion caused by constantly interrupted attention, rapid-fire prioritization, and managing simultaneous digital streams. You aren't just doing your primary job anymore. You're continuously triaging this endless flood of incoming data, which entirely drains your cognitive reserves before the real work even begins. Because our attention exists inside this ecosystem of algorithmic stimulation and endless communication, actual, unbroken stillness is incredibly rare. Let's break down where the energy actually goes. A massive 35% of our mental energy is routinely hijacked by continuous notifications. Another 35% is burned up by rapid context switching. Just trying to remember where you left off after an interruption. Throw in 20% dedicated to the emotional labor of navigating workplace dynamics, and, well, it leaves a measly 10% for actual deep focus. 10%. Is it any wonder our minds feel completely agitated even when our bodies are sitting perfectly still on the couch?
Section 4, the performance identity trap, the exhaustion of competence.
So, as a survival adaptation to all this chaos, a lot of us develop something known as a performance identity. This happens when you derive your psychological safety primarily from being the dependable one, the one who simply does not cause problems. You unconsciously learn that your worth is tied directly to your usefulness, and your own emotional needs start to feel like an unfair burden to the people around you. It's the trap of always being the I can handle it person. And you do. You handle it, and you handle it, and you handle it, until handling it quietly breaks you.
This creates a highly dangerous internal dynamic. We call it the danger loop. First, the systemic stress in your environment increases. Second, instead of pulling back, your performance actually ramps up as a survival mechanism. You instinctively try to outwork the stress just to prove your value. And third, because of this deeply ingrained pattern, slowing down or resting actually triggers immense anxiety and guilt. Stepping back feels psychologically threatening. You literally feel guilty for taking a breath because resting feels like you're failing at being useful.
Which brings us to Section 5, recovery versus true restoration. Why rest isn't working. This right here is why taking a weekend off often feels entirely useless. We mistake passive recovery for true restoration. Think of fake rest. You're sitting on the couch watching a movie, so theoretically, you are relaxing. But your mind, it's still covertly scanning for interruptions, anticipating tomorrow's emails, or stressing over a Slack message you sent 3 hours ago. Your nervous system remains entirely activated, just bracing for the next ping. True restoration is fundamentally different. It requires your nervous system to fully downregulate. It requires those lingering mental loops to finally close. And most importantly, it requires your identity to temporarily detach from the need to be productive. Section 6, rethinking modern work and shifting the paradigm. Right now, organizations frequently attempt to help people survive systems that they absolutely refuse to redesign. Look at the old model. It treats burnout purely as an individual weakness. Under this old way of thinking, leadership throws a resilience workshop or a meditation app at an overworked employee, offers some passive time off, and then expects them to return to the exact same crushing workload. It places the burden of fixing the exhaustion squarely on the exhausted person. We have to embrace the new model. We need to view burnout clearly for what it is, a systems design issue. The focus has to shift towards structural attention management, prioritizing true psychological restoration, and fundamentally redesigning how we work, rather than just forcing people to build more endurance for a broken system. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a couple of powerful questions to really challenge your own relationship with modern work. First, when did responsiveness become more important than presence? Think about it. When did firing off a message from your bed at 10 p.m. or responding to an email within 30 seconds become more highly valued than being deeply, fully present in the actual, meaningful work? Or, more importantly, being present in our actual lives? And finally, ask yourself this. What happens when competence becomes a mask? I want you to think deeply about how much of your daily energy goes into appearing emotionally manageable to those around you. What is it truly costing your nervous system to always relentlessly appear okay? The goal here isn't to magically solve the modern workplace overnight, but hopefully we've given you the vocabulary to finally understand your own exhaustion. Remember, you aren't failing. You are overloaded. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to carve out some true guilt-free restoration for yourself today. You've earned it.